you want me to
Cool.
do like an intro thing?
Yeah.
All
Hit
right.
me up.
All right. Oh no! Wait, let me cross my legs. Jeez. God. Ow! I tried crossing my legs and immediately hit my desk. Good. Strong start. Strong start. Hi. Welcome. It's episode 25. Good to see
Woo!
you. How are you doing? Um,
We've missed you.
we did miss you a lot. We're doing one of our more serious episodes,
Our
and
deep, meaningful.
you know,
Sorry,
the ones where we
interrupted your
well, no,
thought.
it's the ones where we try and add something to the world rather than just laugh about Yas Queen, I guess. Um,
Don't do it.
why did I
Why would you
mention
do?
it? Why did no? Stand strong. Um, this week, controversially, we're using my expertise, for want of a better word.
Ooh.
And we are going to talk about politics, and I'm going to try and answer some questions about politics in a way that makes sense, and it's like politics by
For
dummies
dummies.
for dummies.
Yeah, and before you switch off and think it's gonna be boring as fuck, we're not. I don't think we're hoping for it to be educational without it being like a secondary school lesson
I'm gonna,
about.
I don't want to make it boring. I feel like
Yeah.
it's something that's worth talking about. I know I might know what I'm talking about, and because it's us, it will probably get derailed and go off the rails several times. So I would say stick around. You might learn something, and if nothing else, I think our voices are quite relaxing.
Oh, and I've got a bit of a sexy rasp going on.
She
It's
does.
kind of gone a bit now, but
It's still
yeah,
there a little bit. It's there. It's like a little husky little in the background. So
I think it makes me sound a bit posh.
well, there you go. I mean, what more could you want in life? You know. So you know what, Cat, hit me with a question. It's your
Oh
choice.
yeah, I this is a really random one that I asked Piers yesterday if he could think of a question, and he sent me this. How is it that fox hunting keeps coming up for debate in the UK when the majority of people don't want it, yet somehow it's still going on and coming up to vote on?
It's an I always find it really interesting because most of us really don't like. At no point in my life have I woken up in the morning and thought, you know what I'd love to do today? Love to just find the fox and shoot it. Yeah, never thought that. Especially not in the kind of hunting way with the dogs running around and everyone's on horseback and they're tooting him a horn. Um, why does it keep coming up? Probably because lots of the people who end up in Parliament um
Our supporters.
are supporters of
Well,
it.
no, I was just going to say, I don't know as well whether people realise it's still happening. Um, like I did a petition, fuck's sake, a year ago now, I think, about horse carts being allowed on motorways
Oh
and dual
yeah,
carriageways, because I thought that was ridiculous. I didn't think that was legal, that they're allowed to go along with cars like going 70 miles an hour. Having a horse right next to your car, it just seems like a bad idea.
yeah.
But I would have never have kicked up a fuss about it because I didn't know it happened. And after I saw it once, I saw it several more times. It just happened to be in a couple of weeks. I saw maybe 3 cases of it, and yeah. So I don't know if maybe people who are in cities don't realize that it still happened.
I
I
think that's
understand.
true.
Yeah, like I don't. There's a lot of sort of traditions that go on that unless you've been a part of, you would never have any idea that it happens still, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And yeah, like you say, I mean, growing up in Milton Keynes suburbs everywhere, like stuff. Like no one does. No, there's no. As far as I know, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen on my doorstep. It doesn't. It's not ever advertised me something that happens in my immediate bubble, and so it has no real thing on my life. I mean, I'm sure that there are people out there living in like, and again, they don't necessarily have to be rich, but people who have lived in the countryside and rural areas who are, it's part of their traditions. Maybe for them, it's something that's more important, but it seems always more and more outdated, and like
And
very few people want it.
they do like non-fox hunts. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like they do fake fox hunts. Like I've got lots of family who are really into hunting and stuff, but I think most of them do the like legal one. Well, because there are some laws against it, isn't there? There's certain things you can't do.
yeah. There's lots. I don't really know the ins and outs, but again, because it's not something that I particularly, well, I don't think it's right, and I don't. Yeah, it's not something I've had an interest in. So I think there are some kind of things against it. I think the thing is that you, we have to remember, and I think we'll come back to it, that MPs are there because people vote for them,
Yeah,
and that means that the MPs who are there, who we know are pro fox hunting, for example, we've always, like, they're not hiding it. So in some cases, it's like they voted for it 20 years ago and they voted for it 10 years ago, and so they'll probably still vote for it this year. But they keep getting back there, and they get
yeah,
there on the back of people voting for them. So it sounds like the easiest thing in the world, and I realize it's much more complicated. And again, we'll probably come back to it. But if you don't want these things to be discussed, then you need to A, find out whether your current MP supports that. And if they do, you need to start working out how
if
to,
it's worth it,
yeah, like, are they good in other ways? Does it like kind of balance
counteract
out?
it.
Like, do they do enough good that it's probably okay, because in the end, when they vote for fox hunting, there'll be a majority against it? Or is it symptomatic of something wider and you realize they're really out of touch with you? You know? It depends. It depends. It's a weird one. But as for why it happens, probably because it's something that they care about, that we, like, the people lower down in maybe living in cities or who access this kind of stuff just don't get.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sort of leads on to what the importance of voting is as a question. Didn't
Yeah,
phrase that one,
yeah.
but
I mean,
you covered some of it in that, I guess.
well, I think it's incredibly important because I mean, okay, look, it comes back to this big thing, right? I've been thinking about it a lot recently. It's why does politics even matter? Why should you care about it? And I think it's like this. Politics has, you know, whether or not you like it, whether or not it drives you insane, whether or not you find it dull, politics determines whether or not a woman has the right to decide what goes on with her body. Politics decides how easy it is to travel to other countries, whether you'll have access to vaccines, whether vaccines are even bought in the first place, what you get taught in schools, what kind of healthcare you receive, all these kind of things. And it genuinely comes down to 650 MPs in the House of Commons and I think over 900 people in the House of Lords, although they don't always vote, who determine that kind of thing. And whether you find it absolutely dull or not, it does affect your life. It really does. And so,
I think Brexit is a perfect example of that. Like, I
yeah,
guess with politics before then, personally for me, like, as quite a privileged person, I don't feel like I necessarily felt big impacts on my life until Brexit.
I mean, it's the only. It's easy to feel powerless with politics, I think. It's easy to
Yeah,
feel
I
like it's
definitely
something that
felt that
happens and
way.
you have no way of impacting what happens. Um, and I feel like the antidote to that is to, you got to do For example, I think you should definitely at least know what's going on. You
Yeah.
should know that there's actually multiple ways in. So, yeah, first of all, you should use your vote, even if that means that you go up to it and you draw a massive detailed penis, or you a labeled diagram of a vagina, or you write an advert for the World to Rights podcast on your ballot paper. You should do that and put it in there, because if you don't vote, it's just like you're not, you get forgotten. Like, oh, you didn't vote. If you spoil your ballot and put it in there, that goes down as a thing. Like that is registered as a spoiled ballot. And the more of those you get, at some point, there's going to be a tipping point where they go, right, we've got a bit of a problem here because people aren't voting for anything. And
And it's not that they can't be bothered, it's the fact that they don't have something to vote for.
yeah, exactly. So you mean by all means go and just fucking no one's gonna. You can't be punished for spoiling your ballot. That's not gonna happen. You can do that. It's your legal and basic right to do that. So you definitely should. But yeah, I think it is important, and even if you find it incredibly dull, the most dangerous thing you could do is to not think about it or think it doesn't impact you, because it does. And if having by not seeing it something that you need to at least know about, you're basically saying, hey, go ahead, legalize fox hunting, because I'm not gonna change what I'm doing, so just fucking go for it. Like you got to rein people in. The MPs are there because we vote for them, and that means that we have the power to vote them out. Sorry, I was very rambly and probably quite boring.
Oh no, I was sorry. I was sorry. Like I didn't. I was still paying attention, but I suddenly thought, I wonder what you think of the voting age being 18, but then stuff like, uh, consent for sex is 16 and stuff like that. That's quite an interesting.
I don't have an issue with the voting age being. I think the problem is that when we were at school, and I guess when most people are at school, we did not learn a lot about politics and things, about basic things like how you pay your taxes, or what taxes
Yeah,
you even pay and how they're taken, and and what that means, and how what things you vote for. Like
we had it as an
education is terrible.
extracurricular. I think it
Yeah,
was like, I think I went along a couple of times. It was an extracurricular where it should be in the curriculum.
yeah. It's something that like is like, oh, I couldn't, and it leaves people feeling like if it was if like it's too complicated for you to understand, so just don't worry about it.
Yeah,
And at the same time, you're learning about weird, complex mathematical things that win, like osmosis in cells and like all of the stuff.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, yeah, I can see how that's kind of important as like establishing a basic thing. But the amount of people who will use that information about
C-
biology
completely agree. Yeah,
is like it is not ever going. It's not like going to be everyone. Whereas the amount of people who should probably know about how their taxes get taken and all of that kind of stuff, it kind of should be more. And it's not, the basics of politics are not as complicated as people think. I think you get tricked into thinking it is because you don't get taught about it properly, and it becomes something that's a bit like, oh, it's too much. It's too much to get into. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You do your thing. Go back to playing on your phone or whatever. And I think that's completely wrong. Like you should be learning about it at school, not in like extreme detail, because that's up to you then whether or not you want to take that and do something with it. But there are certain things that you just should know about and understand. And if that happens, then absolutely the voting age should be lowered, because yeah, it's a weird system where you can have sex and get married and
yeah,
join the army or whatever, and things, but you don't have the right to vote as well, and say, well, that's something's clearly wrong here.
It's not so much about people having sex, it's more people having children. That's the conflicting bit. It's like you are allowed to look after another human being, like legally create another human being, but not
But
have a
not to vote.
say in what happens to that child. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Not
that's
vote.
like, yeah, imagine having a child but not being able to have a say about where that child is going to go to school when
What they're going to
like
be taught. Yeah,
exactly
like,
I agree. That's fucking crazy. So yeah, it matters. The one thing I learned, I guess, most of more than anything from 3 years of studying politics is that I could never be a politician because I think it would destroy me not being able to. I don't know. I mean, I always kind of sum it up as I think I have too many morals to be a politician.
yeah. And but that's why I wonder whether there's quite a lot of the very wealthy politicians like currently in power, because to them they know that they can give that career up and still be fine, whereas like with you that would be your main income, that would be your livelihood. So if you realized it was damaging your mental health, you would have to stop, but
Exactly,
then
exactly.
start again in a different career path.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, at the moment in the job that I do, if things are if things get too much at any point and I need to press the pause button or whatever, I can do that. It's not
Yeah.
and it doesn't cause issues. If as a politi if I became responsible, basically, and I would see it as that, I would see it as responsibility to people who voted for me to try and make their lives better, and I wasn't able to deliver on that, I would never forgive myself for that. I'd feel like I really disappointed people. So yeah, it's a weird one. So I asked people, one of the questions I asked you this week, everyone, was I asked you what you disliked about politics, but
I'm
I also
interested.
said don't say you can't just say it's boring because I
Was
want to
there
know
any
what the problem
fuckers
is.
that did say that?
No, no, people were very. I was really. Thank you so much, everyone,
I'm
for coming in.
impressed.
Um, and I'll tell you an answer that came back again and again and again and again was politicians lie.
Yeah, that has definitely been proven this year.
Like that comes back again and again and again. Politicians lie. Politicians are selfish. Um, and you know what? I agree. I agree. That's where we've ended up in life. We've ended up with politicians who are far more interested in becoming prime minister than doing what they should be
Mm,
doing. Like, I have this thing in life. I feel like if you want to be a manager, if you want to be prime minister, you are almost certainly the wrong person for that job. If you're like there and you're like, oh, I really think I should be manager. I think I would be the best manager ever. I'd be the best prime minister ever. You're likely to be one of the worst. And it's very weird. It's this thing that I've noticed with people. You're not the right person for that job. You don't have the right skills, the right needs, the right level of selflessness to do a good job at that. Because you're in it because you think that you deserve to be there and you're interested in your own personal gain.
yeah.
Which means that you end up not doing the right job. Like to be prime minister is something that you have to realize it should come with this level of you're there because people voted for your party. And so they're saying, hey, I think you can do a good job. So
Yeah.
you're there because people voted for you. And that should mean that you are always responsible for those people. You have responsibility to make sure that they didn't waste their vote on you. To make sure that you deliver for them because that's how it should work. That you are voted in, you make decisions that make people's lives better, their lives get better, and they go, I was right to put my faith in you. Personally, I don't think that many of the politicians that get elected are necessarily interested in that. I think lots of them go in like and maybe it's unpopular, but it's no secret that our current prime minister really, really, really wanted to be prime minister. It was his thing. He thought
It's
he
like
should be
bucket
prime
list.
minister. Yeah, he. For him, it was
I've
a
done the mayor bit, and now I'm gonna do the prime minister bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that was just it. That was what he believed he should do, and I don't think that's right. I think that ends up leading to someone who is more interested about just staying there, about giving you enough that you'll probably vote him in next time because why not? He's not done that badly, but he's not actually interested in you. He doesn't actually give a shit about you.
Do you do you think it's still like a realistic position for one person to be the prime minister? Like, you think I heard people saying I would vote for Labour, but I hate Jeremy Corbyn, so I won't vote for Labour now. And
This is the
and that
thing.
to me is like so frustrating because it's like what, so you're gonna vote for Conservatives because you don't like Jeremy Corbyn when yes he'll be making decisions but not like it just I don't know you
I know
I think
exactly what you mean, and it's okay.
it's
So here's
like
the thing.
celebrity influence, isn't it? It's like the personality.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I mean, if I was to like, okay, I'm gonna try and do. This is a note for me editing this. If you're listening to the audio version, maybe get a piece of paper and I'll explain it. But if you're watching the YouTube one, I'll try and actually do something. We are
I'm
not.
excited.
The American system is different to our system, and our prime minister is not on the same level as an American president. They don't have the same things. So, at the top of it, I guess you have the Queen, whose job is she's like she's like one of those machines that just approves things. Like papers turn up and say, "Oh, they voted for this law." Um, Basically, you just have to approve it, and then it can happen. Um, and the general rule is, if a law is passed by Parliament, and you know the government don't decide to block it, then it just goes. It's going to go through. The Queen won't. The Queen doesn't actually have much kind of. She's not going to reject things on the whole. There are
She's
like
not there
small
to
things
cause
where
a
it happens.
ruckus.
Yeah, exactly. It's there because that's what her job is. That's just in kind of that's how we do things. That's how we've ended up where we are. Is that yes, the Queen is like our leader, but in actual fact, because of what we've done over the years, she doesn't really have a lot of say. She meets our politicians. She meets the Prime Minister once a week, and they have a conversation where the Queen can give advice on things. Um,
Yeah.
but it's only advice, and it's very private, and you don't know what goes on in there. So the Prime Minister is below that, I guess, and it's like the thing. But it's the thing. So the name Prime Minister is like first minister, as in they are an MP as well. They just happen to be the one that everyone chose to be
The face
number
of
one. Yeah,
yeah.
the face of the government. Um, but there's very, very, very little that Boris Johnson could do on his own. He basically doesn't really have any powers to do anything alone. All of the power of the government comes from the group below him, which is the cabinet. And the cabinet is made up of like I forget the exact number because it can change, but loads of MPs from the party who are all holding different positions, and that's the place that actually matters. That's where decisions are made, and all of that. So, for example, to say, "Oh, I don't want to vote Conservative because Boris Johnson is the leader," to some extent, that doesn't really matter because he's one person around a table, and if Boris Johnson was to put forward some suggestion and everyone else was like, yeah, Boris, we've had a think and actually this is a dick move and you're a twat and we're not voting for it, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. There's no, like, other people hold different power. Like, Boris Johnson doesn't have his wallet, basically. You gotta think of it like this. He doesn't have the wallet, so he can't actually spend money on something. He has to go and talk to Rishi Sunak and be like, "So I want to spend money on this. Can you give me some money for it?" He can't decide what happens in hospitals. That would involve him going to talk to someone else and be like, "So can you do this?" So he doesn't actually have any powers on his own. He has to go around and try and convince other people to give him stuff. He's like, I don't even know. I don't even know
This
how
is
you
a
would put
great
it.
explanation.
It is. That's basically how it is. So, you know, say you wouldn't vote for Conservative Boris Johnson, or you wouldn't vote for Labour because Jeremy Corbyn was a thing and you don't like Jeremy Corbyn. Well, I wouldn't be so worried about Jeremy Corbyn. I would be more interested in the people around Jeremy Corbyn who you've been to, the people around Boris Johnson, the people who actually hold all the keys, if you will. They're the people you want to watch. And also, you have to remember that these people, the government gets formed, and it's like 100 MPs or whatever. For a majority in the House of Commons, you have to have at least 325. So there's like lots of these MPs who aren't actually in the government and can actually be a real pain in the government's ass because they can decide, hey, we know this is the policy, but it's not for us. Spoken to people where I live, and it's not the one, so I'm going to vote against it. And it can actually cause a real problem. So then again, it's another like thing holding them back. Is like Jeremy Corbyn might want to do something, but this Labour MP who isn't in government, it stops him doing it. And it's like, oh, and it might lead to some anger and frustration, but it reins them in again. And then you got to bear in mind that there's other parties in there as well, whose job it is to literally oppose, to find out what the hell is going on, and to say this is a shit idea if it's a shit idea. So again, it reins them back in. Then you've got the House of Lords, which is a whole other thing, which when the House of Commons approves something, when the MPs that you vote for approve something, it goes to the House of Lords, who that's a whole other thing. But they can reject it as well. And they can send laws back and go, well, yeah, Jeremy, this is a load of shit. Rethink it. Rewrite the section because it doesn't make sense. So it goes back in. Again, it's another thing holding them back. And then you have people
There's
that are outside of government and things. Sorry, say that again.
I was just going to say there's 789 members in the House of Lords.
789. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
that might have
just
dropped a bit actually. Yeah, that's fair. And they don't always all turn up. In fact, quite often a lot of them don't. And then you've got people outside of that in like the parties and things, like all of the advisors and the people inside the party who maybe are a bit closer to people, and they go, "Yeah, we've heard this policy is incredibly unpopular. If you stick with it, we're not gonna do well. We're gonna do badly. These people don't like it." So they are another thing holding them back. So my point I'm making is that there's like a million different. I've oversimplified it, but the prime minister on their own is virtually useless. They don't have a lot of power in and of themselves. Their power basically depends on lots of other people determining what they can do. And he sets the kind of tone, I guess, that he gets to pick his cabinet to an extent and like decide who's sat around the table. So you try and pick people who are the right people to have around the table. But then you have the other thing of if you're imagine put yourself in a position, you're in a position of leadership and you've got 200 people, some of which are your friends, some of which hate you, some of which don't really care, and all of that. Do you fill the room with people who just people who like you, people who dislike you? Do you throw a mix in there? Do you want people who don't care?
Well, you
Because if
ought
you
to pick like people who are gonna challenge you in a positive way,
Mm.
and make you think about things you haven't thought of,
Yeah,
and
and
get
I
the
mean
most out of.
that's exactly it. You can pick people who are just your friends and will go on, Chris. Yes, that's the way. Go on. And that's great. And then we could lose an election in a few years' time because it turns out that what I thought was a really strong idea and that everyone else just nodded and went, yeah, 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 yeah. Love your thinking. Was the terrible, terrible thing. And no one
Yeah.
was willing to stand up. And you have to bear in mind that there are people outside. If you've got all your friends in the room, there are people outside who fucking despise you. These people hate you, and they don't want you to be the one making decisions and things. And they're if you have all of those outside, they're just sat there like, all right, what should we? How do we get rid of them? They can be plotting against you and doing all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
often you get people in there who you don't like and who don't like you, but you bring them inside because if they're inside and they have a like, if they have a job inside government, it becomes a lot harder for them to plot against government because that's their job now, you know, and they're kind of like in a difficult position of hmm, I have to do so. At that point, you get people who challenge you and and stand up to it. It becomes more complicated, but like I guess that's the thing is that for the prime minister to have an easy ride, they would probably need just to have their friends in a room. And if they had just their friends in a room, they probably wouldn't last very long.
I think it's also important to disclaim. I mean, if people have listened to our podcast before, they'll know. But obviously, we are people who have political, biasness. There, like we are both lefties,
I mean,
and
yeah,
so
I
if
will.
you're if you're like a young person listening to this for some objective like it, I mean, I'm not saying it's that, just be aware that there is obviously a biasness. I don't want this to be.
Of course, this is not. I can try. I'm trying to be
This
objective.
is not advice of who to vote for. This is just
No, I
like,
won't tell you who to vote for. That's not my job.
discussing. Yeah, yeah. I
That's not
just
my
thought
job.
that was important to put in case,
Yeah.
like, in case this is the first episode someone's listening to, and they're young and wanting to learn about politics, and then we're influencing them.
Yeah, please don't
I never want it
decide
to be
who
a.
to support on the back of what I'm saying. Absolutely don't do that.
Did you have any more questions to cover, or did you want to go on to the political compass thing?
Well, I
or-
thought we could take a moment actually, now that you've mentioned it. I'll send you my
Oh yeah, I'll send you mine
thing.
as well.
So we did the political compass test, which is a
I can send you
basically
the wait.
I was trying to think of a way of explaining it, but my brain went dead.
It gives you a graph of where you fall on the political compass.
Most people think that politics is just like a thing, and you have
Left or
people that
right.
are on the left and people that are on the right. Actually, there's like a million different ways you could also draw that, and so this, what they call it, the political compass, is like this way of deciding exactly where you are. So you might be left wing, but you might think that actually the government should have a lot of say about what is happening in order to keep things left wing, or you might think that the government should be, not involved in it at all, and it should be just up to people on their own. You might be right wing, but think that people should do whatever they want, and you might be right wing and think that people should have no freedom to do what they want. It's all over the place. So this is like a more. There's more dimensions to it. It adds a new level to it.
I'm like, well, because Chris and I, we agree on like most things. I think I can't think of anything in particular that we disagree on regarding like politics.
I would agree.
And
Hopefully that
I
works.
thought it'd be really interesting to do this test and see where we fall in relation to each other without communicating about answers and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god.
That's weirdly, I'm not gonna lie, that's incredibly similar. Like,
Oh my god.
I'm clicking with it. That's remarkably similar. Yeah, okay. I'll put them. Are you okay with us sharing
Yeah,
these?
yeah, of course.
I mean, basically, just to clarify, we're both lefties. There you go. That's confirmed. And we're both very similar on the kind of.
Whoa, it's identical for social libertarian slash
Authoritarian.
Yeah, I can't say it.
Yeah.
Don't hate me.
It's
We are identical on that.
yeah, we have a similar view on, like, basically, to simplify it, we have a similar view on how much freedom we should have individually to do things, and how big, like, we don't necessarily think that government should be the only ones making a decision, that it should be spread out a bit. In fact, the difference more is just that I am slightly more left wing than Kat is, but
Yeah, you're slightly more left.
I'm not gonna lie. That is
You're almost
very.
extremist left. You're
Oh,
pretty
I am a
close.
fucking mess. Yeah, I'm a revolutionary. Um, I'm not gonna lie. This is very. This is much more similar than I was expecting. This is
What
much
are you
more similar than I
saying
was
about?
expecting.
Well,
No,
considering that there's quite a lot of questions on it, so there is room for you to, um, differ.
absolutely, absolutely, and I think think about reasons why. I mean, I reasons why I might have ended up there, and I guess I want to talk about it because it's not British politics, but it is something that I'd like to maybe touch on a bit. Is so there's a question there about whether abortion should be illegal. Um, well, whether unless like in extreme situations. And obviously in the last couple of weeks, the state of Texas
Oh God.
voted to make abortion illegal in, I think, apart from if it was in the first 6 weeks of pregnancy or if there was a serious health condition, but I'm not entirely sure
Yeah.
about that. Um, no, look, personally, I don't think that a government should be telling someone with a uterus what they can do with that and what they can do. I think that's entirely wrong. I'm entirely pro-choice.
Yeah.
In a sense that whether you think it's right or wrong, and this is not about whether it's right or wrong for someone individually to decide they're not ready for a baby and the best choice is to have an abortion. That's not the thing. The thing is whether or not you have the choice to make that decision on your own without anyone else telling you what the answer should be. I've always believed that that's how it. You should get the freedom to decide, depending on what religious beliefs you have, how you were brought up, whether your personal situation at the time, all the kind of things that could happen. You're the one to decide whether or not you were right at the right point in your life and right everything else to bring a baby into the world.
Yeah.
And if you're not feeling that, if you're not, you want to, then you should have the freedom to have an abortion without anyone at any point telling you you're wrong and you're terrible. Um, and I guess the flip side as well, if you're not in favor of abortion, that you should be able to do that, and that's up to you. But that's for you, not for
Yeah.
me. That's not my thing to vote on into the it's that completely not. That's a choice for the parents of a child or whatever. For the person carrying the baby, and obviously both parents have a have a say, but like at the end of the day, it's the person carrying the baby who's making that
Yeah, that's the
that final
person who
choice, isn't
gets
it?
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if like I've got to be transparent, um, for a period of time, I don't know if I labeled myself as pro-life, but I always explained that the rules I have for myself are different to what I have. Like, I always say I wouldn't have an abortion, but I would not judge somebody else for having one. Um, and that was I did philosophy and ethics at A level, and I think for a long time I thought I was pro life because I was like I don't think I could emotionally deal with that. But that doesn't actually mean you're pro life. If you think that it's okay for other people to have abortions, it means you're pro choice. It's like pro life is like an absolute extreme. No, abortions should be banned. Like they're not right. I've explained that badly.
No, no, you're right. You're right. That's yeah. It's the
If you think
absolutely.
there are
It's not right
some,
for anyone.
yeah, if there are some exceptions in your brain, you are pro-choice.
Absolutely. Like
So yeah, because that I think people thought I was pro-life for like quite a long period of time because
I think I remember once you posting something on Facebook and
yes,
there being a bit of like a heated argument between
I think it's me and a
between people.
relative.
Um,
Yeah,
And I think that's often the way it goes because it's one of those really big issues, right? I think I could talk to virtually anyone and we would have different kind of beliefs, and whether they're like quite close to each other or quite far apart, I mean that's a different story. But the point is, my beliefs are mine, not, and I don't pretend for a second that my beliefs are correct, and the I am not the example people should live their life by. I don't think people should listen to me and go, "Yes, he is always right. I should change my beliefs to fit what Chris says on his podcast." I think that's dumb. I think someone actually made a really good point where I asked them what they disliked about politics, and they said money gets heard more than people. And I think that's actually a really legitimate assumption and feeling that,
Yeah,
especially in America, where I can't remember,
yeah,
I looked up once that the cost of like the total cost of an election in the UK, like including all the money that gets spent on the leaflets that turn up and everything else,
yeah,
is a tiny, tiny fraction of what gets spent in American elections. Because American elections, there's a lot more freedom for people to get involved and form political lobbying groups that have big money behind them, like
yeah, yeah. Like,
billions of pounds pumped into making an advert telling people across America abortion is wrong and we're going to stop anyone being able to do it, for example. It's an entirely different thing, and especially in America, but also here we're not immune from it. If anything,
yeah,
it often here can be a different thing. Money doesn't have to just be here is several million pounds. Do this. It can be a kind of other ways. Maybe there's things like tax breaks and things. There's things like, oh, you know, in a few years' time, if you want to get this job, there's a job here for you that pays. There's always things, backroom deals going on across. And
yeah,
I think that has always happened. It probably will always happen because people become selfish one way or another. Um, but again, I'd always say, remember that actually every few years you do at least have a vote, and one of the best things you can do if you don't like the person who is standing in a parliament with the place, like such and such from Milton Keynes, if you don't like what that person is saying, then
yeah,
you damn well better make sure you're out there when it's time for election and you know do something, vote for a different party, vote for his own tactical vote, draw a penis on there, whatever. Do something to try and get rid of that person. Try and talk to people and convince them, look, this person isn't right.
pain for president, prime minister,
I had another
or both.
thing. Um, sorry, I keep I've had lots to think about over the last few weeks. And I was just something I wanted to mention, and I've thought about mentioning it a few times actually in the podcast, and I haven't done anything. Um, you hear a lot at the moment about free speech. Um, Everyone cares about having the freedom of speech, which,
Right.
as far as I can work out, is often nailed down as I should have the freedom to look at someone who's a different colours to me and throw the most horrible abuse at them because it's freedom of speech. Um, Something I learned at university, or something I learned and then also decided. We learned about in my third year before COVID hit and ruined the whole world. Was the concept of freedom, the concept of the whole thing. Um, and as a thing, most people have the idea that you have the freedom to do whatever you want. Yeah, and that's the end of it for them. So who cares? I can smoke weed because I have the freedom to do whatever I want. I can drive my car wherever because I have the freedom to do whatever I want. I can do whatever.
Yeah.
I For me, freedom is there's a bit more. Everyone has the freedom to do what they want, so long as it's not affecting anyone else's
Impinging
freedom.
on. Yeah, and I
That's
think there's
really
also,
important.
you give up an element of freedom
Yes,
for your protection.
exactly. Exactly. This is exactly where I'm going. I have a very, for me, it's this thing, right? Imagine you exist in a bubble and you're in there, okay? within that bubble where no one else is, where you can't do anything, you truly have the freedom to do whatever you want. You can go wild, sit there naked, throw shit all over the place.
Walk
It's
across
fine.
borders. I
Do
love how that's
whatever.
where your mind went to with your freedom.
You could. I was just trying to think about things that you can't normally do. It. I couldn't. My brain went dead. You could go and cause a shit ton of pollution. You could do whatever because you'd be in your bubble.
Yeah.
The second that your bubble expands to include another person for whatever reason, everything changes. Everything is different now because you're still free to do whatever you want, so long as you're not causing some real issues for that other person in the bubble with you. You know? So now you can't just leave like litter and stuff all around because the other
Well,
person is that's affecting the other person's life. They're walking around now. They have to deal with your shit. You can't just sit there and pollute the atmosphere like crazy because the other person has to breathe in the oxygen that you're like
well, it's a
polluting.
bit like COVID. You're free as long as you haven't got symptoms and you haven't got COVID. You can go out, do
Yeah,
what you want.
exactly. In
But
your
as soon
bubble,
as that,
you are fine to choose whatever you want. You don't have to have a vaccine or anything. It's fine. Who gives a shit? The second it's someone else in it, you are now you've lost some freedoms. You
yeah.
have to. It's not a choice. It's not an optional. To live in a society of other people, you lose the ability to do whatever you want because you have the freedom to do whatever you want as long as you're not causing harm for the other people and you're not stopping them also having that freedom, which means that you have to collectively decide, okay, certain things are out now. We're not going to pollute the air and fill it with shit because we both got to breathe it. So let's not cause problems to a person. I can't just leave my litter everywhere. I can't, you know, if the other, you got there's like respects and things that get, it all changes. Um, that for me is the bit that no one likes remembering. It's the uncomfortable part of freedom of speech. Is you have the,
Yeah.
you have the freedom to say what you like in your bubble where no one else hears or sees or knows about it. The second you include someone else in that, you have to stop and you have to think about it and you have to work out whether the words you're going to say are going to hurt someone else. And if they are, you shouldn't be doing that.
Sorry, I'm like slightly dying.
You're
You're
slightly
like,
dying and I'm rambling on about I'm really if I've made this dull, please forgive me. I hope not. I hope that um you're finding this kind of interesting in some way and it's useful. And again, please remember that this is politics by dummies for dummies. So,
yes,
you know, don't
yes.
think whatever you think. And if you're thinking about something and you're.
Oh, and if you've got an experience of another country's like you've lived elsewhere, I'd be really
I
interested
would love to.
to.
I don't know a lot
Yeah.
about other countries' politics, sadly, because there's only so much you can learn about in a day or whatever. But I'd love to know more about other countries and where things. I mean, I know the kind of basics of things. I know that for what Americans often or what Republicans certainly in America see as socialism is what we would see as just things that we do. The NHS for Americans is social, or for Republicans, sorry, is socialism. It's this crazy left wing idea that you should be able to go and you pay your taxes and everyone gets a chance to not die if they have a broken leg or something.
It
Um,
is crazy going, like, I'm sure you've had this going abroad and being like, fuck, this is different. Like, you have
yeah,
to pay, it just is.
it's insane. I can never get it into my head, and that's just because of where we sit. So, but the kind of thing is that the kind of left right wing kind of thing it shifts about a bit depending on where you are. I know that for America it's kind of generally speaking it's more kind of it's sort of right. So what they think of as left wing, I would probably go, well, that's just what you do. That's just normal. Why you? That's not.
Yeah,
You should be doing that
yeah,
already. So it changes and varies from country to country. So things that I think are fine, not so things that everyone in the world will think is fine. Politics around the world is a crazy thing. Um,
yeah. I don't know how long we've been going for, but
we've been going for a little
have
while.
you got anything else to add?
Oh, I know what I wanted to go for. Um, so I did ask people whether they felt like if there was an election tomorrow, would they feel comfortable that they knew what was going on and what they were voting for? And I didn't ask people that because I wanted, people to feel stupid or anything. I did it
Yeah.
because life is, and I just wonder what's going on in people's mind. And so, thanks to everyone who got involved, of course. And it was fairly evenly split. I think a couple more people voted yes than no, but lots of people voted no. And for people that are across ages, backgrounds, everything else. Um, and hey, look, here's the thing. Yeah, there's a lot to try and get your head around. If you could spend the rest of your life learning about politics and you would still not know massive chunks of things. Um, and it's tough to be informed about it, but there are certain things that you can. First, I think if you want to have a really accurate picture of what's going on and things, then you should right now go and stop reading the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Express and any
Yeah.
of the like papers like that, the Mirror, yep, any of these who are clearly not in. I saw. I don't know if you're aware of the newspaper, the Daily Star.
Oh yeah. It's awful.
I do not know how, like, the BBC
How
have
it's
this thing where they
legal.
publish, yeah, like they publish the front pages of their newspapers, I think. So you scroll through, and it's like, oh, the Star's in it, and it's like, naked people did thing, and it's like, how the fuck are you a newspaper? What is this? Is worthless. You're convincing people about some politics that you don't get, and you're just telling them easy lies. So, let's don't just stop right now. Don't even, don't go on there like, oh, it's the Daily Mail and they've published this thing about Kim. No, don't. That's not what you don't be supporting the Daily Mail and other such news websites in pumping out shit and convincing you about things that, and presenting them in the wrong way. There's a YouTube channel that I love. It came about I think during COVID. It was when I became aware of it. I think it's really good. It's called TLDR Politics. They're on YouTube, and I think they're brilliant because they basically take something that's going on, something political that's going on, and they try to explain it to you in a way that doesn't require you to like have a degree in it or have studied it for billions of years, but they just try and explain it in a way that makes sense, and
Yeah.
they don't try and push you in a certain direction necessarily. It's quite good at being presenting these facts and going, well, look, this is what's going on, and you can make up your own mind on these things. There's lots of kind of resources like that are just interested in this is what's going on, and I'm going to try and explain it to you without telling you whether it's right or wrong. I'll try and find some more if I can and share them throughout the week because
Yeah.
I think it's quite. It's actually we're in one of the best times and worst times, weirdly, to get informed about politics because there's lots available from lots of different places, which also means there's a lot of shit and a lot
Yeah.
of lies and a lot of nonsense and
Although it's better to have more information than less information.
I would
Like,
say so. You just got to be
yeah, I think,
selective with it.
yeah,
Don't it's always good to have more. You don't want to not have the information on something important. Um, you just have to bear in mind that just because something is there, it doesn't mean it's correct. I
yes,
can post anything. I could start a blog that posts lies about anything, and people will probably eat it up like crazy. Doesn't mean it's right.
for sure. Oh
Um,
no.
what happened?
No, my voice just went.
Oh my god.
I was
Um,
normal and then I went to, oh no.
I
I think you're very good at explaining all of this, and
I hope
yeah,
so.
thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Oh, thank you for
Crash course in politics.
There you go. Politics. I've gone. Yeah, politics
We covered
for
a
dummies,
lot.
by dummies. No, by dummies, for dummies. I don't know. Um, Something unrelated before we go. I don't think I told you about it that you might have seen.
You're
We have a
pregnant.
Twitter account now.
Oh, okay.
We're on Twitter.
I did
Um,
not see this. Oh,
no,
that's
I
quite
didn't.
good timing.
I just finally thought, oh yeah, I should probably add this to the thing. So please go and follow us there. I mean, I'll maybe we'll talk about it next time because you know, it was a bit of a mess. But basically, Twitter is a nightmare to try and get the right handle that you want. So prepare yourself. Um, if
I
you
am an
go and
absolute
follow,
noob.
it's the underscore WTR underscore pod. Um,
Jesus, it was
I
that
know.
hard.
All right, look, here's that. We'll share it on our things, but basically, yeah, go follow, and we'll try and use that as well as another way of sharing stuff, and maybe I'll post shit on there every now and then or something. We'll use it. It's another bit of that social media stuff that you're meant to do and promotional stuff. But hey, I mean, we've made it to episode 25 and you're still here, so thanks.
Oh, next week we are not doing an episode, but the week after we are. Is that right? No, we are doing it next week.
No, we're not doing it next week.
We're not doing it next week. It's
No,
the week. Yeah.
we're doing
Sorry,
week
I
on,
fucked
week
it.
off, week on, week off.
Oh, yeah.
We're look,
I'm banned
take
from
this as an
explaining
example. Kat is incredibly stressed and busy and
this.
having a tough one at the moment. So hey, maybe send Kat some love if you're
Thanks,
like
boo.
send those hearts or something, and that'll be good.
Cute.
And yeah, we won't be back next week. We'll be back the week after that. At some point, we'll get back to normal, but it makes more
Yeah,
sense
that's
to
it.
not.
The 26th. I've just lost track of dates, to be honest.
It's a mess. But look, we're gonna make. We want to make good stuff, not shit stuff, and sometimes that means we have to mess things around a little bit. But
Oh
yeah.
my
So
god. Do you know what I've just realised? Next
What?
time that we'll be speaking to everyone, I would have finished my masters.
you'll have finished your masters and you'll be a year older.
And I'll be a year older. Oh my god.
It's all going on. It's all going
How
on.
crazy is that? Well, it's gonna
The
be
whole world could have changed.
It's gonna be a weird 2 weeks, guys.
We'll have lots to talk. Honestly, there's like so much we can talk about when we come back. So hey.
Yeah, it'll be nice to catch up on like a social side instead of like heavy stuff so much as well.
But hey,
But
thanks for sticking around to episode 25. It feels like a milestone,
Yeah,
25. Nice.
This morning I was actually thinking, what can we do? Because it's not that far until it will be a year, of us doing this.
Getting
it's not
closer.
that far in the future. We're actually gonna make it.
I can't believe that.
God.
Who knew?
But thank you for giving us this platform, and I hope we haven't put you off.
Yeah. Don't send us hate stuff. Send Kat some love. If you want to do anything this week, send
I thought
Kat
you were
some
gonna
hearts.
say send Kat some hate. I was like,
No,
I cannot
send
emotionally
Kat some love.
cope.
She is worthy of your support and your good
Thanks,
vibes.
boo.
So send them her way because girl deserves love. But
Okay,
for now,
love you
Kat has to go
guys.
and die, and I probably will too.
Bye.
Bye.